I mean, I did live my dream, and there is a lot more to playing football and being a professional football player than cars, money, clothes, and the glamorous side of things that people tend to only look at. You know, there is a lot of sacrifice. There is a lot of times where you are very lonely and you can be in dark places. And as people who are young and not allowed to express themselves in other outlets, it can be a very suppressing industry.
Football is 90 minutes of an emotional rollercoaster of intense rivalries to entertain adoring fans. But when the final whistle blows, the cheering stops. For some players, the void between one game ending and the start of the next can be a dark and lonely place. Fresh Ego FC and United Stand TV took to the pitch to tackle the silence around footballers' mental health problems. Marvin Morgan organised this charity game in order to raise money for the FA's Heads Together campaign that seeks to get more football fans to think about their mental health. How easy or hard was it the first time you spoke about your own mental health to someone?
I can say something there.
Marvin Morgan started his clothing brand while still playing. In retirement, he mentors youth players on life after football.
I came through non-league football into league football, and I wanted to be a professional footballer. And then when you got there, it wasn't what I thought. So I don't know. I feel like as a kid you strive to be like top, and if you don't get to the top, you can just get below that. And I expected more, so I was a bit disappointed. And then I've mentioned it before. You think you should be playing at a higher level, you see your friends go higher, these things will affect you and you're happy for them, but you just think to yourself, am I good enough, am I not good enough? You could get injured. That will affect you mentally as well because, again, as Marvin said, sometimes you're on your own. If you're injured and everyone else is fit, you're in the gym on your own. You could be with a physio, but there'd be a large part of that you're on your own. So it's very, very tough to be a professional sportsman. And as what Marvin was saying, and Miles was saying, there's plus side, but there's also another side that people don't see.
Would any of you touch on that loneliness aspect of it? Because as a fan, depending on what level you're playing, that you could have 1,000 people cheering your name, you could have 90,000 people cheering your name. So as a fan, you think that's admiration, you've got that love, but then all of you are touching on there's actually an element of loneliness that comes from that.
Yeah, I've always thought, being a footballer was one of the most lonely things you could actually do. Generally, certainly when you're a young footballer, you've left school, your friends will go on to other things, you're thrust into this world, and you only ever get to holiday around footballers' times, and you're always in that company, and then you're thinking, isn't there a bit more to me? And you're always searching for it, but you never actually get there. And I think as that young footballer, one thing that we're never prepped on is, even when you become a pro, it's still a journey. And you're not necessarily strong enough for that whole journey all the way through. When you look at the lengths of some careers, that will go on and on, you think, I'm going to be doing this for the next 10, 11 years. This is, and it's year after year, and it's no sooner you finish one competition, it's into another. And I do think, skills need to be sharpened and actually just preparation for young people for the journey that they're going on, because I haven't seen one destination yet, it's always something else. And
Marvin, you're nodding your head to that. So could you kind of elaborate on your mental health those last few months when you were playing football professionally to how you feel now?
I got to a point where I wasn't enjoying going into training, and someone who's only known to love football, it was very strange for me to think that I'm waking up and I don't want to do something that I've dreamed about my whole life.
Marvin Sodell played in the Premier League and represented Great Britain at the London Olympics. But despite having many years left to play football, at age 28, Marvin retired from the game due to years of trauma to his mental health rather than his physical health.
There were many things over the last few years that I changed in different aspects of my life to try to kind of pull myself out of depression and I guess find new meaning in life beyond just being a football player and more identity to who I am, because as a football player, that is you, that is your life, that is who you are. You are not. At times I wasn't Marvin Sword, I was just a football player at this club. And so for a long time I was searching for, real meaning and real identity, and it got to a point where I realised that football was a common denominator in how my emotions were. I was so tied up in the day-to-day life of being a football player and the identity of a football player that my emotions were just following my career path essentially. And so you get the highs and lows of day-to-day, but you get the highs and lows in each moment in a game, whether it's a pass, a tackle, a touch, a goal, and you don't have medians in football. It's either very good or very bad. Everything is extreme. And if you're following that extreme emotion, it's very unhealthy. And so I got to a point where I wanted to just have control over that and have control over the situation. And then, as what happened with Alistair, it's football normally decides when your time is up. And for me, I just wanted to have that control over my situation, over my life and career, because most often, 99% of the time, it is football that decides when you stop playing.
Footballers and musicians play in front of thousands of cheering fans, but fame can still be a lonely place. X Factor winner Miles Stevenson wrote a song about his struggles with depression in order to inspire fans to seek.
And Miles, you've chased the football dream, but you've gone a completely different path now. You're a singer and you've been a different type of celebrity. And what's the impact of that, where you've got such a high profile and people are always contacting you? How's that impacted your mental health?
In two ways. I think being seen as a celebrity has its pros and cons. Obviously, a lot of people see the glamour of it, and they get to see the clothes and the fashion and the cars that I drive or stuff like that. But behind kind of the closed doors, you're very secluded, especially within music as well. You're very, very secluded. But at the same time, what I've gone through personally with depression, I wanted to flip that on its head. I produced and wrote a song called "Love Me While You Can," which we just performed on our latest headline tour. And basically, that was about my depression. I wrote a song about my depression. I presented it to the other boys in Raksu and said, "Look, this is the stuff that I went through. I want to talk about it and speak about it to our fans, because I get a pro of being in the public eye is that I get people messaging me about mental health or about racism. For instance, one girl that I won't mention her name, she was a victim of the Manchester bombings at the Ariana Grande concert. Now, we were the first people that she came back to see at the Manchester Arena. And she's got PTSD, and she has very bad depression at times. And I think I would have been doing her a disservice if I didn't speak about my situation and let her know what I went through. So I wrote this song and spoke about it to however many thousand people that came and watched the show. So there's pros of being in the public eye and being able to voice my opinion on mental health and the stuff that I go through on a daily basis. At times it's hard. Obviously, behind closed doors, you are, like I said, you are very secluded, and I think the rest of the boys will vouch for that as well. You don't know who to turn to, because at the end, at kind of face value, you're meant to be someone's idol. You're meant to be, you're somebody that the younger generation look up to. So then, in my head, it was kind of like, well, who do I turn to, But yeah, fortunately for me, I found it within myself to change and flip it on its head.
Football is a game that, for a select few, becomes a career. Less than 1% of children at football clubs will ever reach professional level.
When I can remember.
I was about 14, 15.
I started playing football about 5.
Yeah, and I was 7 years old, And it's because of that I've always said that football is actually the shortest paid career, because there's that 7-year-old that wanted to be the footballer. That's really when you start making those sacrifices. Talk about these young people earning more money than their parents. I always remember when you're growing up, a young footballer was often the way out for his parents or their parents, and the pressures that they would have gone through is like untold, but nothing that they would ever get to talk about and discuss, because you think you're living a dream that everybody else wants to live.
At 23 years old, Alistair's football dream was cut short after he was in a car crash that left him with career-ending brain injuries. Miraculously, 5 years later, he represented Great Britain's cerebral palsy team at the Paralympics.
Alistair, you had your football career taken from you due to your crash. Can you elaborate on the mental impact that had on you?
Yeah, it was a very tough time for me. Physically I had to recover, but kind of mentally, it was really tough because you weren't sure if you were going to actually see the end of the tunnel, because my body was in such a low place. But for me, the one thing was, it was like sticking with your true friends, and funnily enough, it was this guy right here, treated me just like he always did, and that was always very important to me, to still be treated like the previous me, and having the right people around me really helped me get through it, and having a strong family and support network was probably the one thing that, took me through. I know Marvin was just touching on how he had that tough time within football, but for me, it was that football that really helped me get back on track in terms of helping to set my goals again and strive for things.
Do you think academies prepare these kids for life after they get cut?
No. It's as simple as it's as straightforward as that. They don't.
And this is something of one of our boxes that we want to try and say to life after football. Of we done a few talks with some Premier League clubs. To name a few, Man United, Arsenal and Chelsea, and how many kids would do Rashford? It's like 0.3, 0.4. No one's going to go from the youth team to the first team. It's very, very rarely. I know Marvin did. He's one of these success stories, but again, he has a story that I feel like people need to know about. You know what I mean? As a parent, do I want my son to play football? Do you want your kids to play football?
Probably not, really.
Yeah.
So then the question to you, Marvin, during your career, was there ever a time when you were cut?
Yeah, I was released. I went on trial to Chelsea at 13 and didn't get signed. I was signed at Fulham at 14 and was released at 16.
So then those two instances, how did that impact you?
It was tough because, you think you're that close to living your dream basically and actually being able to make it, and then it's gone, and then you think, well, what now? Because at that point, at 16, when I was released from Fulham, you get told, right, we wish you all the best, and you can go to these exit trials and good luck, and that's it. And so I'm at a point where I've dedicated my whole life towards becoming a professional, and see, the scholarship was the next part of that, and I wasn't given a scholarship. And so I think when I've kind of put my schoolwork to the side, because to become a professional football player, it takes a lot of hours of practice, and it's a lot of dedication, and everything else comes second. And so I was in a point where my education wasn't as good as I'm fortunate that I was fairly good, but I wasn't anywhere near the level that I should have been at. And so I didn't know where I was going next. I just knew that I had to make it as a football player. And see, fortunately I did, but anything could have happened at that point.
And do you think it's a case that parents aren't given enough information of how to parent their children through that moment where they get the letter through the door that says, actually, we don't want your child to keep coming to training?
It's impossible. It's impossible to not.
Parenting is hard as it is.
Not just that. It's impossible to say to a child who wants to become a professional football player, you need to not play football as much and you need to do this, because you have to be so dedicated to get there. And even now it's even harder, because there are so many more players, so many better players, so much more information. Yeah. So
I would say that the minute I started Fresh Ego Kid, my career went downhill, because managers, chairmans, they don't see me taking football serious, and that's the problem. Because if you're a footballer and you want to do something else, it's frowned upon, because they're like, whoa, what are you doing? Because you need to focus on this. This is your job. But your job is from 9 till 1 p.m. Then you've got the whole day to kind of do whatever you want, and what do you do with your time? What do you do with your mind? And that's the problem. The footballers have so much time, they have so much time to think, and sometimes that's a bad thing, because they're thinking about negative stuff that kind of gets on top of them, and then it's hard, so hard to get out.
Is that the biggest part about the world we live in now? Before, football was very much 90 minutes, you train in 9 to 1 like you said, but now because of social media, you're connected to these fans all the time. So they'll be sending you messages, they'll be tweeting you, they'll be constantly on your back or supporting you, doing whatever. and you can't switch off from it now. As soon as you open your phone, you're connected.
Very, very difficult to block that all out, and obviously with Miles as well, with that fame as well. Like it's hard to a fan to say, or a football fan to say, you're rubbish at football, and I don't like your band, and then you'll have all the positive, but it could just be the one that could tip you over the edge, and it's so difficult.
What's it like being on a pitch, being on a stage, having all of these people cheer for you, and they love you in that moment, and then you go home to your house?
There's no better feat for me. There's no better feeling being on stage. Like the rush you get, like the adrenaline rush you get. I don't know if it's the same for the boys, but the rush you get when you first walk out and you see a sea of people.
So then how do you deal with the low of when?
But then the moment you come off, it is, I'm not Miles Raxu no more. I'm Miles Stevenson. I'm back to reality. I'm back to myself, and you have to deal with the life problems. You have to deal with your personal life, like I don't know, with a girlfriend or with an argument with a friend. Like the moment you get off that stage, you're back to normal. You're back to your normal person again, and it kind of you go. There's no in between. You're literally on top of the world at that moment in time. The moment you step off of them, for me, when you step off of that stage, you're back to normal. You check your phone. You'll see a message from a girlfriend or like an argument or something like that. Like it's hard to deal with it, and like there's no in between, and I think that's what's hard.
Would everyone else agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, do you know what? I've spent a lot of my life now trying to find that in between where you can actually keep yourself in that kind of zone. The very pinnacle of things you're trying to say, okay, let me not get too caught up in it because it's going to be gone soon. Like, you enjoy it and cherish it while you can and always live with that memory, but then at the same time, as I step off and things are getting low, don't hit the floor because, find that in between, mix around the people that, truly care about you. And I think that's why social media, I find, you don't necessarily have to play up to it for me because I don't know these people, but why am I ignoring, this crowd that I've got here, that ones that do care for you and help you grow as a person.
So then finally, guys, if you could each give one piece of advice to people on how to better cope with their mental health, and then how to deal with whether you've got 50 followers or 5 million followers, like how you navigate those worlds.
I think I'll go back to do not chase fame or money. Chase success. Try and be successful. Try and be the best you can be, and that will take you far. Try to chase or look at social media and think, they've got this or they've got that amount of followers. Some of these followers could be fake, they could be buying these followers. So do not chase that, chase success and be the best that you can.
I'd say just enjoy life for what it is and its moments, the real, the love that you have, your, joy, and at times it's not going to always be like that, but that's fine. It's a part of life, it's a part of your journey, and every single road that we drive on has potholes, and every single journey in life has bumps, and it's fine. So just enjoy, each moment for what they are.
I can only echo that. For me, it was always find enjoyment in what you do, because we always talk about being resilient and things like that. But I think once you find something that you love enough and that you cherish enough, resilience just goes with the territory.
I would say do your research. Do your research in any job role or anything that you want to, any dream that you want to chase. Do your research. Movements like Fresh Ego FC can bring it to the forefront, and I think, kind of do your research and give yourself the knowledge and see the pros and the cons of life. There's in life experiences, there's pros and cons of everything. Do your research and respect and love life for what it is. Don't always chase the buck.
Cool, great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers.
Marvin Morgan's Fresh Ego FC have partnered with the PFA to stop players' mental health being maintained by the emotional roller coaster of football's wins and losses.
Most people believe the life of a footballer is one of fame, financial reward and perfection. But this game is trying to highlight that it's not the physical, but the mental strain that's made some players turn their back on a game that they once loved. Antoine Allen, ITV News.